Pak Ferry Effendi, PhD. We know that Pak Ferry is one of the top researcher in Indonesia and very active scholar as well with publication. And at the moment, he has 9 AIDS index on Scopus profile. Pak Ferry will share with all of us about the approachable research method during COVID-19 pandemic. Pak Ferry, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, your time will be 30 minutes and continue with question and answer. Please welcome Pak Ferry.
Yeah, thank you Ibu Dr. Yulis. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Dean, Faculty of Nursing Universitas Airlangga, Professor Dr. Ahmad Yusung, and also the Vice Dean, and also distinguished speakers today. We do have many excellent speakers from Indonesia, Professor Nur Salam, and also from United Kingdom, Professor Roger Watson, and also we had Professor Ilkus from Turkey with us, and also Professor Becky from Taiwan. And I'm also greeting all of the online audience at the Zoom meeting and also at the YouTube. Yeah, welcome to our online webinar this afternoon. And because I'm on the last session, please don't get sleepy and stay with us. Yeah. So please allow me to share my PPT. Yeah. Today I would like to share with you interesting topic when we would like to conduct research, especially during this special this crisis, during the COVID-19 pandemic. And also, as we know that the world is changing, with COVID-19 cases at today's date, there are more than 38 million COVID-19 cases, and I believe that everyone is trying their best to find a solution with limited resources, especially from us as a researcher, as a faculty member, or a principal investigator when we are conducting research. And of course, engaging in a rigorous methodology-based approach might not be feasible in this crisis, owing to time constraint and other restrictions such as lockdown. And also we need to accept that our society is going through an extraordinary crisis, and research institution or university itself worldwide are facing this kind of crisis, and they would like to survive and also to strive on this current situation. So this is maybe my personal experience from my personal view to share with all of the audience what kind of maybe the best or maybe the most approachable research method that we can do during the COVID-19 pandemic. So first of all is be grateful for whatever is your situation at this time, and I believe that trying to see the bright side of difficult circumstances is beneficial for our mental health. So it may can increase or boosting our immune system and also the physical health. And of course, one of the most powerful tools for staying optimistic is the gratitude itself. And yeah, please be grateful and also stay safe and stay healthy at this current situation. Yeah, as the case is rising globally and nationally, yeah, we are facing the reality of lockdown. So reality of limited contact with many people, yeah, and sometimes even with our family, our close friend, best friend, yeah, and so many changes. So when we go to a hospital or when we go to the public health center, we may significant changes there, significant situation that we do not see many people visited the health center. And also sometimes as a people, as a social people, we feel that we are disconnected to the participants. And as we can see also around the world, people get ill and die, yeah, school closed, yeah, and the healthcare system is overloaded, yeah. Employee lose their job, yeah, and the high rate of unemployment over the world, not only in Indonesia, yeah, but also in outside of Indonesia. And also countries have to spend a billion on medical bed art, yeah, and also medical aid, yeah. And I think for everyone, yeah, including me, yeah, COVID-19 is a huge stressor that also affecting our routines or our daily life. So the fact that the coronavirus disrupt our day-to-day life, yeah, provide challenges and also provide opportunities for all of us, and we need to reconsider what we do, yeah, and how we do it and why we do it. So for example, like normally we are going to the university for teaching at class, and yeah, suddenly now is not possible anymore. And also many people have had to change their mode of studying or working, and some maybe work from home, yeah, instead at the office, or some maybe study from home, yeah, instead of study at the university, yeah. So this means that a lot of our routines or our daily activity also interrupted, yeah, and affected by COVID-19, yeah. And the impact not only affected the faculty member, but also the student and also nurses itself, both at the clinical and community level. So the challenges quite obvious, especially for us as a faculty member, yeah, at the university level. We may have had experience on increased workload, yeah, because previously we just dealing with one learning model, yeah, one learning methods, yeah, and then now we have to get prepared with the hybrid model, yeah, online and also offline learning model. And also some may be feel that they had emotional burden, yeah, because of this current situation, and also diminish connection with student, especially when we are conducting the asynchronous learning model. Yeah, and the second one for the student, the challenges also very obvious, especially related to the limited resources, yeah, such as some students who reside in rural and remote areas of Indonesia, and they may have lack of resources, yeah, for having electronic devices, yeah, such as a laptop, a smartphone, or others. And also the learning resources, electricity and internet connection, some insufficient in some part of Indonesia. So we should be grateful that right now we don't have any obstacle or difficulties with this kind of basic infrastructure. And also for the nurses itself, both in community and also in the hospital setting, as COVID-19 also something new, something unprecedented, for all of the healthcare system. So there are constantly changing policies and procedures, as we may see that some regulation, some standard operational procedure also changing, especially regarding the recommendation from the WHO itself. And also the nurses may have burden, emotional burden, and related to the personal and family stress, and they may have extra precaution because especially for the nurses who are delivering a direct care, for the COVID-19 patient in their daily activities. So the challenges for researcher or for the principal investigator is very significant, and this is also including for early career researcher, maybe for some who are entering the doctoral degree or master degree, and any postgraduate degree program, they have to set up some research, and they may face this kind of challenges, especially when we would like to manage our team and project, and I believe that some faculty members also having more than one projects, to execute the research plan for this current year. And also the challenges regarding the administrative for those who are receiving research grant, both from the government or from the university itself, they have to struggle how to complete, how to finish, and how to achieve the deliverables within certain time of frame. And here we would like to share with you regarding the what is the suitable or what is the best approach to conduct research, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. But firstly, I think the challenges when we are doing a research during this time of crisis is various, between individual, between institution, and also between countries, as we may aware that everybody working remotely or working from homes. That means that the potential for distraction also so obvious there, and we have to deal with this kind of distraction. And of course, when we are not closely monitor the progress of our research project or research group, some may be lack of commitment, so the deliverable may not be achieved within certain time of frame. And another challenges is also related to the technical issues, because we rely heavily on the internet of things. We rely heavily on the technology, and when the technology have a problem or have a disconnection, we also face this kind of challenges here. And also like us, sitting in front of the PC or joining everyday webinar, like every day or one day is a Zoom day, we may sit down in front of the laptop screen, from morning to evening. Sometimes we feel exhausting, rather than face-to-face interaction. And because we are social person, social people, and some of the team member maybe cannot engage directly with the colleges and leaders, and may feel disconnected. And also some may say that they feel less creative or less productive. And also another challenges is working remotely or from home, often result in a fusion of work, and sometimes it mix, between private life and also the office life. And this is create some difficulties for some people. So if we look at the study conducted by some researcher from PLOS One, we may seen that everybody is interested to look at or to examine the COVID-19 issue. So according to this study, there is an increased rate, increased number of COVID-19 studies, especially starting from the last year till on the middle of 2020. So next is the opportunities. So the opportunities during COVID-19 pandemic, when we would like to conducting some research, is also leave some space for improvement for us. Especially we can reflect and reconsider what is the target of your research or the deliverables itself. And also we have to keep busy, we have to keep innovative, and we have to keep to challenge ourselves and try to help others to make our life meaningful. So as we know that one of the purpose of research is solving the problem, and we may see that many problems rising, especially related to the COVID-19. And also we have to be blessed that we also find a better way to meet others, especially from the via online, either by using Zoom or any other platform that make us connected each other. So what is the best available data for conducting the research? Here I would like to divide into three types of research data. Firstly is the primary data, the second is secondary data, and the third is tertiary data. So for the first, the primary data, I think all of the audience already familiar with this kind of approaches, especially for the conducting quantitative or qualitative research design. And the first speaker, Professor Nur Salam, also already mentioned what kind of strategy that we could use when we are conducting quantitative research. So the first one is for the non-experimental research. I think it's depend on the design of the research itself, but for the data collection here, we may shifting from the offline to online survey. So I believe that most all of you already have experience using Google Form or Qualtrics or any other tools that help us to collect the data. And here what you should consider is the clarity of the research procedure, and also the approval from both, from the ethics committee and also the government authorities, and the most important thing is from the respondent. And for when we are conducting non-experimental research, I think regarding the data collection, we have to be aware with the bias selection. So in another word, we have to be sure that the right respondent fill out the questionnaire. So this is another challenges when we don't see the people on the respondent face to face, and we have to have a certain strategy to tackle this issue. And for the experimental research, whatever the research design, I think when we would like to conduct a direct intervention, although with strict health protocol or with the record health guideline, and also we may want to consider to hire any marathon from the side of research, this is still having a high risk of exposed by COVID-19. So instead of doing a direct intervention, we have to keep learning and keep searching what is the best way to conduct experimental research, especially during this time of crisis. And the second option, you may want to doing intervention with online meeting, such as when we would like to deliver health education, counseling, any other type of online intervention. Yeah, we may would like to conduct this intervention via Zoom, yeah, WhatsApp, Line, or any other social media to accelerate and reach out the subject. And yeah, thanks to technology also, there are some platform that may be useful for conducting intervention when we would like to deliver some programs or some activities for the subject. So like we can use monitoring apps or any other apps that could be useful for this kind of research activity. And the second one is for the qualitative research design. Whatever the design, you may want to conduct phenomenological research design, grounded theory, or yeah, etc. Yeah, we may shifting this kind of data collection to online in-depth interview and also to online focus group discussion. Yeah, I think this kind of strategy quite rising right now. Yeah, and we may want to adapt and implement this kind of data collection, and because when we are delivering the qualitative research, researcher itself is an instrument. So we have to be sure that researchers have a capacity, have a good understanding regarding the design of the qualitative. And also we may face the technical issues, yeah, especially yeah, when we rely on the technology, yeah, because some participant or some subject may have difficulties to communicate with us. So this is some example of our online FGD, yeah, focus group discussion with some stakeholders, including Ministry of Health, Ministry of Manpower, yeah, and then Ministry of Social, yeah, when we were at Jakarta to conduct online FGD with various stakeholders. Yeah. So this is some consideration when we would like to deliver the or conducting the research using the primary data. The first one is, of course, the validity and reliability of the research tools. Yeah, because we have to be sure that the tools itself has been validated and reliable for the research. And we have to closely monitor the data, yeah, especially the respondent or participants, whether they would like to move on to or continue working on the data collection or on the intervention or not. Yeah, and also we have to be sure that we got the research permission from the government authorities. And the second one is we are moving to the secondary data. Yeah, this is actually this data quite popular, yeah, quite famous for all of the researchers worldwide, especially when we are facing this kind of pandemic. Yeah, so I would like to divide into two kind of secondary data. First is free and open. So for the free and open, there are many options, many choices for us, yeah, to utilize the data. At first is you may want to consider the DHS, yeah. The name in Indonesia is Survei Demografi Kesehatan Indonesia, but the English name is Demographic Health Survey. Actually, this survey is an international survey, and also you may want to look at the specific countries. And the second one is Indonesian Family Life Survey. This is also a big secondary data, yeah, big data set, and you may want to utilize this kind of data set. And the third, there is also open and free secondary data. We call it Global School-Based Student Health Survey, or GSHS. Yeah. And another type of secondary data is based on subscription. So we have to undergo some procedures, yeah, before we utilize the data set, and some also just a few amount of Indonesia rupiah, yeah. And you may want to consider like the data from SUSENAS, yeah, Social Economic National Survey, and also Basic Health Survey, and Facility Health Survey. And for this access of data set, you may want to access it at BPS websites. So they have one platform, yeah, one single services, yeah, to give a service on the secondary data. So the first one, I would like to introduce the DHS. Yeah, like I have mentioned before. Actually, this is international survey, and it's been conducted over 90 countries. And the survey is not only related to the maternal and child health, yeah, but they also have a survey of HIV/AIDS, yeah. They also have a data set of malaria, and also they have a huge information regarding the health facility, or we call it a SPA, yeah, Service Profession Assessment Survey. And utilizing this kind of data having some benefit for us, yeah, especially because the data is very big, yeah, having 1,000 variables, and mostly they are nationally representative. So when we utilize this data for research and also for the publication, the chance to get accepted at high reputable journal also very high. Yeah. And then the second one, if you would like to move to the data set of at the community level or individual level, you may want to consider the Indonesian Family Life Survey data set. So the IFLS survey is a longitudinal survey in Indonesia. It has a different research design with the DHS. Yeah. The DHS research design was cross-sectional, yeah, and this one is longitudinal. And the benefit or the advantages using this kind of survey is the sample is representative, around 83% of the Indonesian population, and contain over 30,000 individuals living in 13 of the 27 provinces over Indonesia. So this is quite large, quite big data set, and you may want to utilize this kind of data set for your research and also for the publication. And the last one is the GSHS, yeah, Global School-Based Student Health Survey. Actually, this survey also multi-country survey, not only in Indonesia, but also in other countries, which is consists of the data set of the students from secondary to from junior high school to senior high school. Yeah. So what you should consider when you would like to utilize the secondary data? The first one is the statistical skills, because you have to be familiar with especially data, yeah, because the data are very big, yeah, very large, and some software may not sufficient, may not handle the kind of this kind of big data. And also you need to consider having a data science skill, yeah, especially you have to explore the data set, explore the variables, you have to clean the data, and also you have to manage the data properly, yeah. And also there is some data limitation, so even when you are interested to examine or to look at certain issue, but it may be not available at the data set, and you have to adjust with this kind of characteristic. And the last one is tertiary data. So for the tertiary data, I believe that this is also very popular recently, yeah, especially regarding literature review, systematic review, or any other types of review. And to undergo this kind of research activity, we have to understand all of the basic methods in health research, yeah, especially for both, yeah, quantitative and qualitative approach. And also even when we conducting the any reviews, yeah, related to the tertiary data, we have to be skillful, especially on the searching strategy. What kind of online academic database that we can access and that we can use, yeah, to answer the research question. And also we have to get familiar with the keyword and how to find the best keyword, or the same concept with the key concept, or the with the keyword that we would like to know. And also we have to conduct the article selection, and we should go with the critical appraiser, and then we have to be familiarized with any critical appraisal tools, yeah, such as CASP, or Prisma, GPI, or any other protocol or guideline. And lastly, we have to analyze and synthesis the result of the data, yeah. And then this is some types of reviews, and regarding one study, there are 14 types of different reviews and also methodologies. So you may want to visit the source by yourself, yeah. So to summarize my topic for this afternoon, so when we would like to conduct research during the COVID-19 pandemic, so first is there is also opportunity, there is also some flexibility to modify our research and analysis. I think this is very important, especially for a student with low resource available, and also for us at the low resource setting, yeah, to keep in mind that we have to keep on the schedules, but we have to be flexible with some limitation or some aspect impacting our research goal or research activities. And also we have to follow the guideline, yeah, especially the research guideline, and also the publication guideline. I think already mentioned by also Professor John Watson, yeah, regarding the ethics publication and so on, yeah. We have to keep in mind that even on the time of a crisis, we still have to follow those kind of guidelines. And also in this time of crisis, we need to support each other. And the last message from me is, please do not go alone. Yeah, you have to work in a team. Yeah, you have to work with your mentor, with your supervisor, with your teacher, with your lecturer, how to deal with the current situation and how to catch up with the research deliverables. And that's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention. And I turn the time to Ibu Dr. Yulis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Ferry, PhD, for your fruitful presentations. And we now come to the question and answer session. There will be 2 questions from the participants. I will have a look first. The first question from Septian Mugi from Stikas Eka Harap. The question is, could independent research about cost published to international journal, and also do we need to find a local advisor process and a local reviewer to review our paper before we send it for publish in international journal? This is the first question, Pak Ferry.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Dr. Yulis. To the topic about cost, can be publishable in international journal. I think all is possible, because we already know that there are many types, many scope of journals over the world, especially in health-related areas. Let's say that we do have a journal of health management. We also have a journal of health policy and planning, and I think the scope still related to the health financial or health budget, that related to the cost. And for the method or for the partner, it's depend on the research members, or depend on the main authors, whether they would like to work with another writer or another researcher, because we have to consider what is the expectation from the research member itself. What do you like to expect from another mentor, to help you to cope with the publication aspect. So I think the main point here is the significant contribution, of its member, and to the future or the prospective mentor also eligible assigned as an author.
Thank you, Pak Ferry. And then the second question from Anselmus Aristo Parut again from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. The question is, if our original plan was to collect data offline, but due to pandemic shifting to an online survey, do we have to apply for another ethical applicants, or just inform to the ethic committee that we shift to the data collection method? I will reread again. If our original plan was to collect data offline, but due to pandemic shifting to an online survey, do we have to apply for another ethical applications, or just inform the ethic committee that we shift to the data collection method?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yulis. So when we would like to shifting the data collection strategy, we have to keep in mind that all of the protocol has been recounted and has been legalized by the institutional review board or the ethical committee. And when the researcher feel that there is difficulties in conducting this kind of data collection strategy, and they would like to change the strategy, I think this is still possible. And what you have to do is just inform the committee ethics, that you would like change the data collection strategy with the reasons, with some justification, and I believe they would like to grant this kind of issue.
Okay, thank you, Pak Ferry Effendi, PhD, for your presentation and also for the question and answer sessions. As our appreciation, we provide you with the certificate as speaker. Once again, thank you very much, Pak Ferry.
Thank you, Ibu Dr.